What's up, world? What's going on? It's your main man, the author. Right back at that ass again. Here's another one. Huh? Just want to make this brief video, man. I just wanted to speak real briefly, man, on black women wanting to send their kids to school looking fly, fresh and so clean. Meanwhile, the black community goes without, you know, um, any, lucrative businesses, any type of employment. And it seems like it's mostly, I know, there's an argument on the net about how responsible women in general are about handling money, but the black queens, I would think, would be separate from that, man. But I see a lot of just saw this story on the net, man, about this female. She she was killed, and I guess it was a carjacking. Someone carjacked her, and she was killed. She was a school security guard, and she had this nice Charger, man. She had this like Dodge Charger. It was white, had some rims on it. Beautiful vehicle, man. And she had 3 kids, worked as a security guard. Looked like it was a new Charger. I know when I worked security, I didn't have money like that to buy a new vehicle, but so it looks like it was a new vehicle. She had 3 kids, and but if you looked at the house that she lived in, I think she was renting too, man. It was like some small little ass house in like a bad part of town, man, or AKA the hood, And I guess the guy came from around, the back. He put the gun on her. He was trying to get the vehicle. Somehow he wasn't successful in getting the vehicle, but he did manage to shoot her, and she didn't die right away, but she ended up dying from her wounds. Not saying that she should have been killed or she should have died over her wounds, but to me that's like and the boy pled guilty and he is in custody. I think he was like 18 or 19 or something. So not saying I blame her at all for, it's not her fault. It's not a justifiable crime because she spent money on a Charger and had a raggedy home, a very small home too. It looked like it wasn't too much bigger than a trailer. But I mean, she shouldn't have been killed, period. But that's a prime example of how black women are very wasteful with their money. That's why I think I saw another statistic that says that the average black woman is worth, on average, about $5. So, but they're having a GoFundMe for this woman, and they asked for, I guess her mother asked for money to help bury her and help to support the kids. She asked for 50 grand. Met that goal. I think she's at 200 something grand now. Then she upped it, from what I hear, and upped it to 500 grand. So I think it's a little bit of greed, there. But my point is, man, black females are very, very wasteful in terms of money, man. That's the typical move they'll make in terms of, you'll go ahead and buy a brand new Dodge Charger, but the house will look like shit. Or you'll have a brand new, outfit on, but, no life insurance or 401k, or, they're just very wasteful. You know what I'm saying? And that's what my argument is too. I'm like, well, as many black women, as much money as black women invest in weaves and wigs, you would think that they would pretty much own that industry. They put billions of dollars in that industry, yet, there's no economic opportunity for blacks in the hair industry. We don't own that industry. We don't really have a patent on any industry, which is sad at this time. But and it's been like that for many years. But and the reason why put black women on the spot is because, and then they'll say, well, it's because the men haven't stepped up. But based on feminism, they've had the front seat for the past 35 or 40 years. They said if they don't need a man, they can do bad all on their own. So there they are. And then, two, I mean, you can't expect the black man to step up and be a man when you don't even want him in the house. So you help throw him out of the house. So it's going to be hard for a man to step up if you don't want him in the home because you want to continue to live the lifestyle you're living. So that argument is kind of false. I think that's a false narrative where they just want to try to come up with an excuse as to why they're in the front seat and they're failing. Oh, because the men haven't stepped up. But if anyone were to ask you directly, you don't want the men in the household because that means you'd have to do what you are supposed to do. But to make a long story short, man, what I really want to talk about was now how much black women are wasteful with their money. But in addition to that, how they pass that on to their kids. A lot of these guys too, these young boys being born, going to the street life. The first thing they do when they get that drug money is they buy clothes, cars, the same thing that their mother would have done with the with the money, right? They don't get that money and invest in real estate, or they don't take that money and invest it in a college fund, or they don't take that money and invest it. Only the big drug dealers have the front companies with the grocery stores or the the stores on the corner, or used to, right? But most of those guys, man, when they make a little bit of money, they spend it all on clothes, cars, jewelry, and flossing, just like in the rap videos. And I can't help to think that these young boys aren't getting that from their mothers. I saw it when I was growing up. It was so bad in the inner city when I was going to school, and this is what I really wanted to bring up in the video, man. If you didn't have a certain type of shoe, I know some of you young guys our older guys can probably attest to this, and I think it's worse now because I was a teacher about 5 years or 6 years ago, and it was the same thing. They were making fun of this female student in my class, one of my students, because she didn't have the right shoes on. But I can relate because when I was a kid, I didn't always have the name brand jeans and the name brand shoes. The clothes were, neat and fit. There were no holes in the jeans, but if you didn't have Nike shoes on, and some of that is still the same now with Jordans, that's a Nike brand. If you didn't have the Nikes, if you didn't have the certain type of pants, shirts, you were sometimes mocked and laughed at. Nelly talked about that too in one of his videos, how it was so bad for them in St. Louis that sometimes they couldn't even go to school because they ain't had a right shirt or pants, which is amazing because all of us were attending that inner city school, so it was obvious we were all going to the same shitty school. So it was obvious that none of us had money, right? Like you said, some of the kids, they'll have a pair of Nikes on. They won't say nothing to you because you don't have Nikes on. That's idiotic on so many levels, right? And then it's like, so it's obvious that none of us have money. And the worst thing about it is, even though some of the kids, their wardrobe was a lot more expensive than mine when I was in the 8th grade, I was probably one of the only kids going to the inner city schools that actually grew up in an actual home, a 2-story home. Not saying it was the nicest, it was decent. Not saying it was like a mansion or anything like that, but I was in a nice, 2-story, grew up in a house. A lot of them grew up in projects or 1 or 2 bedroom homes. Now, granted, the house that I grew up in was my grandparents and it wasn't my mother's, but when you do grow up in a house, you kind of have a mentality of, okay, maybe one day I can get my own home, which I have now. A lot of these kids now, if you grow up your whole life in an apartment or a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, psychologically, having a home is not really even on your mind. That's way past what you can even fathom. But the poorest kids usually were the ones with all the name brand of Nikes and all the name brand shirts and whatever, and girls with the necklaces, and usually they came from the poorest areas, right? So you know how some of them were receiving these items, right? In that game. So and basically, man, I mean, it was a type of thing where the Nike, and it's kind of weird because the Nikes and whatnot, uh, Nike doesn't spend $1 in the black community. I repeat, Nike don't spend not $1 in the black community. It's hard for the average black to even get a job to work for Nike, even on a base salary level of making 35 grand. All right, Nike doesn't even. I bet you, and if you look up the percentages of how many blacks Nike hire, it's probably not that high. It's like any other business, right? But blacks, if you didn't have the Nikes on, you had on they call your shoes Bobos or whatever, and they were just following what the rappers were doing at that time. It was Run DMC who had either you had Nikes or you had Adidas, right? And pretty much whatever the rappers wore, that's what everyone else in the inner city, they follow that trend. Still the same today, man. It was the same in the 50s. Little Richard had the conch or the fry hair, and all the other guys followed, and those guys got more girls. Our people follow entertainment. Still the same now, man. It's probably going to be the same in the future, right? But my point is it's like, what we invest, what we expect each other to have, and that vicious cycle continues. And I think I did touch on this in another video. When they get older, you'll have the Lexuses, and now you're going from shoes and clothes to the cars and things like that. And then it becomes commonplace for our people to be spending more than what they have, right? That leaves a lower amount to save, to invest, and for the past 30 years, our kids have been following the black woman and her spending habits, which are terrible. So that's my thing, man. I mean, I think that's a bad situation where you have, and like I said, I had the kid in my classroom in 2012. She didn't have on, and she was saying, well, she didn't have on the shoes and the clothes. She just had on regular shoes, regular clothes. Everybody else, a lot of people in the classroom had a certain type of sneaker, certain type of socks. At that time, even socks were big. They didn't care much about socks when I was growing up. But now you got to have name brand sneakers and name brand socks, right? And clothes and the jewelry and things of that nature. And and jewelry mostly is a female trait. Mostly females like jewelry, which is why these guys have all the chains, because jewelry is not really a huge thing for men, right? And she said out loud, she was like, it shouldn't be about what I wear, it should be about what's in my mind. I was thinking to myself, and I was telling them that as well, like, you shouldn't be laughing at anyone about how they dress. But it just took me back to 8th grade as well. Nothing has really changed, man, with the black community in terms of what we as people, especially the blacks in the inner city, what they view as important. And like I said, the same group that raised the kids that were in my class is the same group that helped raise me, single black females. My mother was a single black female. And like I said, we were very fortunate for me to be, raised with my grandparents in some ways. But just that single black female dynamic is the same now, even more so. Now it's like more brothers want to be in the household but can't because she doesn't want them in there because she's trying to follow her mother's lead. So trying to prove that she can do it by herself. Right? And like Chris Rock said, hey, man, I can drive a car with just using my feet. Doesn't mean it's a good idea, right? So But yeah, I want to touch on that, man, because let me know what you think about that in terms of what we deem as important. Because, like I said, Nike doesn't invest anything in the black community. Michael Jordan, like I said, I don't see a lot of jobs out there where blacks are working for Michael Jordan, or working for the Jordan company, whatever the shoe label. I don't see a lot of blacks don't own that. Michael Jordan doesn't own his own shoe. It's his name is on it. They're using his name to promote it, but he doesn't own Nike, and you don't see many blacks, like I said, working for the Nike company or look at any of these things, that blacks deem important. Back in the day, it was the Jacob Jewelry. How many blacks work for Jacob? I know blacks don't own that company or own Jacob's Jewelry, right? Because I think they showed him, and I believe he's a white man. So all the things we invest in, the Lexus, vehicles when they get older, Lexus, that's not black owned. Even a lot of these mortgage companies, none of them are black owned. Very few black owned banks. Even if they do call it black owned, it's almost like black colleges where it's being funded by white philanthropists, right? And basically, usually the few quote unquote like black colleges or black banks that exist, they usually are the banks and colleges that are struggling the most, right? You can tell by their standard, it's much lower than the average standard. On average, I mean, for example, Clark Atlanta, all they got 6 colleges in Atlanta sharing a 2-story library. Whereas I went back to Rochester. MCC has a 2-story library. That's a community college. And Clark Atlanta supposedly has a PhD program. And you got Clark, Morehouse, Spelman all sharing a 2-story, and Morehouse Theology, like 6 schools down there sharing a 2-story library. So I mean, and it just I don't know. It starts from the lowest seed, which is the clothes and all that. It's like I don't know if it's what the situation is. It just seems like when it comes to housing and businesses and corporations, usually ours, if we do have some type of ownership that exists, our businesses are below standards, but we are the biggest consumers. We invest the most in companies that not only blacks don't own, but most of these companies won't even hire blacks, right? So I just wanted to point that out to you guys, man, and just let me know what you think. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell, leave your comment. What do you think? Was I on? Was I off? All right. And you guys take care. It's the author.